Hello everyone, I'm bringing you a video today which somewhat continues the sort of late 80s, early 90s theme which has been present on the channel recently, and indeed to a degree sort of the Gulf War theme as well, although these aren't specifically Gulf War issue items we're looking at here, or a Gulf War issue item we're looking at here. What we are looking at is a pair of British issue lightweight trousers, not the typical green polycotton lightweight trousers. These are in fact made, this pair is in fact made in Desert DPM. And the reason I wanted to talk about these is I think I have covered a pair on the channel previously, but this particular pair have some interesting details which I wanted to note. Also run over the sort of some of the, I guess, not a myth, but misconceptions regarding the two-colour Desert DPM print. And obviously to have a look at the trousers in a bit of detail as well. We'll have a look at the label and so forth as we normally do. So without further ado, we'll get into the main part of the video now and have a look at this pair of lightweight Desert DPM trousers. So here we have the trousers we're going to talk about. These are quite interesting, quite a nice example of this pair of trousers first of all, and we'll have a look at the details of these in just a moment. They are made from the sort of same weight of Desert DPM cotton as you would see used to manufacture the desert version of the tropical combat uniform for use in the First Gulf War. But these predate that, and they show that the cloth in this print was available in the late 1980s. It pre-existed. It had been introduced before the Gulf, and there's sort of a misconception there that because the tropical combat uniform made in this cloth had to be rushed into production and there was a rush to produce it in bulk for that purpose, that the cloth itself and the print were both sort of rushed into production, and the print pre-existed. There wasn't a rush to design this two-tone print. It had already been introduced, and the reason for the design of this we'll get into in a little bit later on in the video once we've had a look at the trousers in a bit more detail. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to look at these. They sort of tell that story a little bit. So the design of the trousers, basically the pattern these are made to is the later version of the British lightweight pattern. British lightweights are typically manufactured in a green polycotton, but this version, this desert version of them, was made in this two-tone Desert DPM print, as you can see. So the design basically features its two hip pockets here, or simple patch pockets with an angled opening at the top there, as you can see. You have one leg pocket on the side here, which is again is a simple patch pocket with a squared off pocket flap, which you can see there. Bring the waist up here, we can see we have various belt loops around the waist with small buttons securing those small battle dress type buttons, which are in more of a tan colour than the typical olive green or darker green buttons that you'd see on the green lightweights. So that's obviously to match with the camouflage pattern. You have two at the front there, one on each hip, and then two at the rear, as you can see there in terms of belt loops. And then at the side here, you have side adjusters with a metal buckle, one on each side, of course, to allow the waist to be adjusted in. See those there. If we flip these all the way around, you can more clearly see the two rear belt loops there and the rear pocket on the rear right hip there. And you can actually see a slight difference in the colours in the DPM here, which is something you do see at the time. So obviously there's not been differential fading or anything here. There's just a slight difference in the print of the cloths used to make the pocket. Probably an offcut that was just the right sort of size to make the pocket was used here, whereas the flap has more of a similar colour to the main body of the trousers. Just a slight manufacturing variation in the cloth, which was within the scope of the specification. The reason these are particularly interesting, as I say, is that they show the use of this print and this cloth prior to the Gulf War and prior to the introduction of the Desert DPM tropical combat uniform. And we can see that from the label here. If we pull the label up, which is around on the right hip and the waistband, you can see here we've got the contract number here, SL33A3537, which I think is a late 80s contract number. And you can see the designation of these here: trousers men's lightweight desert camouflage DPM. And then you have the NATO stock number there, the sizing details, and the manufacturer there, J. Compton Sons and Webb Limited, of course a prolific manufacturer of British uniform items, and made a large quantity of the Desert DPM tropical combat uniform for use in the Gulf. But as you can clearly see from the label here, these trousers predate that. And you've got the washing instructions and so forth there as well, and the space to write in name and number. Just mention that for completeness. We look inside here. The interesting detail I want to talk about is the cloth used for the reinforcement within these. This seems to be quite common. I've seen at least one other pair of trousers which have this. And it's basically factories using up cloth that's not going to be seen on the outside, but is nevertheless the right weight and so forth for use in the strengthening. So this is the strengthening piece for the rear pocket, the rear hip pocket there, you can see, and this strengthens where the flap attaches on. And this is a piece of 4-colour Desert DPM. And you can see here we've got the very light tan base, the slightly darker tan as the second colour, and then 2 different shades of brown. I hope that shows up there. You've got a caramel and a very light sort of, not chocolate brown, it's still quite a caramelly colour there, but you have that 4-colour print. Now this was the initial design for British Desert Camouflage based on the temperate DPM, which of course has 4 colours as well. But a large amount of clothing was made and sold to countries in the Middle East, including Iraq. And there's certainly, I think my friend Craig has an Iraqi contract 4-colour Desert DPM uniform. And because of that, there was a need to introduce a different desert camouflage cloth, camouflage print for use by the British Army, which is where the 2-tone Desert DPM comes in. It's a shame really, because the 4-colour is a really nice print, purely from a collector's point of view, that is, I'm saying that. So just an interesting detail of these, and it sort of tells, I like these because they tell a little bit of that story. They have the cloth which had been designed. Obviously, I think some of the items which were made for certainly Iraq and other Middle Eastern countries were made by J. Compton and Webb. So it makes sense that if they had that cloth available and offcuts of it which were the right sort of size to make those reinforcing pieces, that they would use them. It doesn't detract from the garment at all, and obviously that camouflage isn't visible, but its inclusion in these is interesting, and I say sort of tells a bit of that story of the reason why the 2-colour DPM ended up being designed and introduced. So there it is, just a quick look at these lightweight Desert DPM trousers and a little bit of background on the Desert DPM camouflage. So I hope you found it interesting looking at these. From what I can tell, it's not unusual to find these with the 4-colour Desert DPM material used internally for the strengthening. So obviously this cloth was had been in production, there was quite a bit of it about, and using it up where it wouldn't be seen inside, and it's actually really not particularly readily apparent that it is a different cloth unless you sort of take the time to look. It makes good sense. Obviously it cuts down on waste. So just an interesting detail with these which I wanted to bring up in the video, and also talk a little bit about the DPM print itself. As I say, hopefully it's been interesting looking at these and talking about those details. If it has, and you'd like to see more of this sort of thing, please do consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already. And whether you're newly subscribing or you've previously subscribed, please do make sure you hit the little bell, the notification button down below, which will of course alert you when I upload future videos. If you really like my uploads and you would like to support the channel, you can, both Patreon and PayPal, link down below. And as I always say, a huge thank you to everybody who supports the channel using those 2 methods. It really is greatly appreciated, as I always say. Thank you all very much indeed. If you'd like to follow the channel on social media, you can. Facebook, Instagram and Twitter are all linked down below. And if you'd like to get in touch with me, but you don't really use social media, there is of course an email address in the description as well. That's everything for this video. So until next time, bye for now.